Now, almost 240 million children around the world are living with disabilities. A recent Unicef report includes data from 42 countries and covers more than 60 indicators. These include child well-being, nutrition, health and access to water. Yetnebersh Molla from the Unicef Children with Disabilities Programme joins me now via Zoom from Kenya. Yetnebersh, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This research that you conducted as Unicef recently, when I look at your press release, you say this new research confirms what we already knew. Is it a lot? Is this scenario getting worse and worse by each and every year?
Well, this report definitely tells us new things, as well as also reaffirms what we knew before. For example, in terms of the number, as you just rightly mentioned, today we know that more than 240 million children with disabilities are in the world globally, whereas the previous information or data we had, in particular from the World Health Organization, was that 93 million children with disabilities live in this world, which tells us that the World Health Organization figure was 1 in 20, whereas the UNICEF's global report that we launched today tells us that it's 1 in 10 children has a disability. So this is a significant knowledge that can drive change forward. In fact, with this report, it's not only numbers, but we have already been able to confirm that the deprivations of access to services, to protection, to health, to education, of children with disabilities is still there, and we have now figures, numbers. So those anecdotal knowledge we had are now supported by figures from those countries and regional estimates.
Let's just focus maybe on the African continent and also focus on one of the challenges, which is access to education. How bad is it?
Well, unfortunately, we are continuing to sing this song that still education is being served as a privilege for children with disabilities in our continent. And as you know, UNICEF strives to ensure that all children have access to all their rights everywhere, whether in an emergency or stability situation. Children with disabilities are still out of school, as you can see, when compared to their peers without disabilities. It's 49% less likely that the children with disabilities are in school. So, for example, here in Kenya, we know that only 10% of children with disabilities are in school. Even those who are in school are not in inclusive settings, and they are still subject to segregated settings. And as we know that education is the entry point towards independence, dignified life, and prosperity. So failing a child to go to school is failing to provide him his lifelong opportunities, including employment and community life. So, and COVID-19 has exacerbated this situation. We know in this continent, in a recent data, that children with disabilities are among those who did not return back to school after COVID, and they are also among those who have not received accommodations during distance education and other alternative settings. So unfortunately, we still have that gray mirror telling us that children with disabilities are still remaining from the education.
Which basically means then access to employment is then minimized, isn't it? So the cycle continues.
Absolutely. That's why I say this is a life cycle deprivation. And that's what this report tells us, that they continue, the fact that they are denied education, they continue to feel discriminated, they continue to be exposed. For example, if you see, as again, another comparison is that children with disabilities are 32% more likely to be exposed to severe corporal punishments, So it's about lack of protection, lack of employment, lack of health, lack of information. It just goes back again to cycle.
Are African governments listening to you when you present? I assume you do present, your research and, to African governments, whether it be the education department, whether it's be welfare and so forth. Are they listening to you? Is the attitude changing at all?
I'm very optimistic that things will change, as you know, and now than ever, African governments are challenged in terms of where they need to put investments. Still, we know, for example, that Africa still is not delivering, and financing towards inclusive education is heavily supported by donors from the Western hemisphere. So this is evidenced with research. So I think it's important. Yeah, they keep on making policies like from the Eastern and Southern Africa region, where we cover as Unicef SRO. We still have seen change in terms of policies. Many of them have policies and strategies. Unfortunately, we don't see the resources where the policies and the strategies are, and the issue of inclusive education is still considered as a luxury. I think we really want to send a message with this global report that you are missing out untapped resource, which could turn your countries into becoming more prosperous and more developed. So I think this is a wake-up call. We have the numbers, but the numbers by themselves are not achievements. They are only means to transform the inclusion of children with disabilities in education, in health. So I think it's good that we have the data that we have released today, but unless the governments use them to plan their budgets, to plan their implementation on education, health and protection and other services, I don't think it will serve the purpose that UNICEF intends to do with this global report.
Okay, I guess it's all the legislation in the world, but very little implementation, isn't it? Yetnebersh, thank you so much for joining us there. Yetnebersh Molla, UNICEF Children with Disabilities Programme Specialist.